I was just extending the invitation to join us on retreat. And I'm really excited about this upcoming weekend. Just a quick note about coming on the retreat. Uh, retreat is like a conversation with God. It's very similar to a conversation you might have, with a boyfriend or girlfriend, a partner, where it gets to that, beginning stage of the relationship where it's like, hey, are we doing this? Are we committed? Are we committed to each other? And for many people, right before they make a commitment, there's a little bit of fear that comes forward. And sometimes, God will give you another opportunity, to do something else. And, it's a game that God plays. It's a game that evolution plays. And it's just as curious, like, are you committed? Are you wanting to give yourself to this path? And so, in a very common way, or very funny way, rather, I used to be in charge of just helping get, a bunch of people to my teacher's house in Colorado when they'd come on retreat. And, a couple days before, there'd be a slew of phone calls of people canceling, and people who couldn't make it, people who were afraid of the snowstorm that was coming, people whose Aunt Louise died or, was really sick and needing support. And so expect the same. Like, God will really challenge you whenever you say, I'm going to go on retreat. God will give you an opportunity to do something else. And whether that something else is, to go see X-Men 12 at the movie theater. I guess they don't have movie theaters anymore, but, to do something fun and exciting, different than the spiritual path. Or, sometimes there's some disaster that strikes. And the question is, can we really ask, like, what's important? What's important to me? Where am I dedicated? And don't think that you're a bad student or something if you have a true real life emergency. Those happen as well. And so let's all do this. Why don't we just close our eyes and get settled here? And I'm going to invite you to bring your attention and your awareness deep into your belly, into your hara. Let's just breathe here, anchor here. Connecting deeply and fully. With your Buddha nature. Quiet, silent, yet anchored in this deep eternal peace. And so simply feeling and experiencing here. And beginning to notice how the nature of your experience changes. How it deepens when you unhook from your mind. And invite awareness and your consciousness to awaken deep in the belly. If any of you need a point of focus, just imagine a couple inches below the belly button and then inward. Gently acknowledging that which is unchanging, unmoving, about your essence. Thoughts may come and go, feelings may come and go. Pain or sensation may come and go. Feelings of bliss or wonderful spiritual feelings may arise. But notice there's something here beyond it all. Something stable, awake. Something absolutely sane, clear and rooted. And as you let go more and more fully, deep into the belly, you may notice almost like a radiant darkness. Like a quiet power. Like the depth of outer space. I'm going to invite everyone in the group just to surrender a little bit more fully. Letting go of any tension, any struggle, any resistance. And just notice what happens when you let go into the radiant darkness. You might begin to notice a new world waking up within you. Very silent, deep. Eternal realm. It may feel very ancient, almost prehistoric. Just opening to this. Melting, settling in, smiling. Just asking this question, who am I? Beyond my emotional nature. Who am I? Beyond my everyday consciousness. What is this presence? This depth of being? Can I surrender more fully into this? Just beginning to notice how rejuvenated you feel the more you surrender into this depth. And so I invite you just to continue to breathe and to feel and to open. I'm going to move into more of the teaching aspect now of tonight's program. So the other day, Friday, I decided on just very spontaneously, to run out to the desert. And on my way out, my daughter called me and said, "Hey, Dad, can I join you?" So I said, "Yeah, sure. Now let's go climbing." So I loaded up the van and we went out to Indian Creek, Utah. And just as soon as I started driving out of town, I just felt just this great relief from unhooking from the computer and all the responsibilities. And my daughter told me, she said, "Hey, Dad, you're not going to like this, but I just got my a vaccine, and like the school she's going to admit that they're requiring everyone get the vaccine, and I just wanted her to wait a little bit and make sure she was all pumped up with all of her good vitamins and everything." And her grandpa got one of the vaccines, and they put him on life support or a morphine drip because they thought he was going to die as soon as he got it. Well, my daughter, she seemed to respond quite well, and she was, looking real full of energy. So I said, "Okay, I wish you told me that before we left." But, we got out in the desert and just had a wonderful evening by the campfire with a bunch of my climbing friends. One of my buddies, he told me that Canyonlands Needles, which is kind of where we were camping by, was considered one of the darkest points in the lower 48 states. Just brilliant stars and vast heavens. And me and my daughter and our friends were just melting into the hugeness of the sky, just stayed up late. And just completely letting go and just surrendering to the huge expanse of the sky. Really feeling this dark, radiant divinity. It's such a grace to be in, a place like the desert where you're so far from a city. There's just so much space and light, and really, you don't have to, come up with the question of who am I, contemplate it. You just feel that question in the air. It just brings you into a state of deep contemplation and deep communion with all of life. So we had a wonderful evening. And the next morning, I woke up real early as I normally do. And my daughter, she didn't wake up. She's like her dad. She's an early riser. I started poking her, saying, "Hey, what are you doing? Why aren't you getting up?" And she's just laying there in bed moaning. And I said, "Oh, are you okay, sweetie?" And she just got really sick from the vaccine. And so, we got up and we gathered our stuff. And I said, "Okay, how about Daddy takes you back home?" Life's like this sometimes. You go on a big trip and get out to the middle of the desert, and sometimes someone gets sick. And sometimes things don't go good. Sometimes you forget your climbing shoes, or your hiking shoes, or your water, or whatever it is. And so I'll do just about anything for my for my daughter. So we got back in the van, we drove back, and she just felt terrible the whole day. And then woke up this day, and I felt really sick again this day. So we're on the third day here, 3 days away from it, just feeling sick. And it just really makes me think just how hard life is on planet Earth. I was listening to this sermon Richard Rohr was giving, the teachings of Paul. And one of the beautiful things that Paul brought forward was this idea that God's love is just everywhere in everything. Like the Christ is everywhere in everything. And it's arising in a less than perfect world. For most of us, we grew up in a world, or we were taught through our school and our education, just a reason to be logical. And through logic, we came up with all these strange, bizarre ideas that life should be a certain way. Life should be a certain way. Like life should just be easy for all of us. Life should eternally get better. We should be able to beat every sickness and beat cancer and this and that through science and through medicine. And this idea that we can control life through logic, through reason, through washing our hands and wear a mask and all this kind of stuff. And again, this is all good ideas. So I don't want to say, I'm not here to say the vaccine's bad or anything like that. But, sometimes we're given a choice between, a vaccine that might make us sick and a sickness that might make us really sick. Or, I had a friend the other day who got the sickness and he didn't get sick at all. And so it's just such a bizarre world where we can't control it. And this really messes with our ego. We try to be logical. We try to do all the right things. We try to hurry up and, get the vaccine, and then we get super sick from the vaccine. Maybe we had COVID and we beat COVID, and then, or we got through COVID. Then we get the shot and we get sicker from the shot. Maybe it's the other way around. But it's just one of those things where humans, and rightly so, we try to stay. We try to do everything we can logically to avoid pain. And what the beautiful thing that Paul brought forward was, here was the Son of God, Christ himself, this great enlightened master. And life didn't go so beautifully for him. He was beaten, nailed to a cross. He suffered and he was nailed to a cross. And then, of course, the beauty with Easter is that he rose again. He rose again. But there's something in him that outlived this world, this realm. With the teachings of Paul, when Paul speaks about the absurdity of the cross, the absurdity of just, how about a virus? The absurdity of a virus. That there's a thing called a virus that can make us all sick. The absurdity of measles, or, sexual assault and violence and racism, just the absurdity of all these things. This is the world we live in. And we have all of this within us, Some of us think we are above, or on some moral high ground. I heard the other day that human beings in the last century, like our species, killed 100 million people in the last century. Like, if you just really feel into that, like, this is what our species did to each other. We killed 100 million of each other. And just the craziness of being human, the craziness of life here in an evolutionary world. And yet there's this paradox that the Christ is with us, the Christ is here, that there's eternal love and light and freedom and bliss available to all of us, in us, as our very nature. And this is the paradox. It's an unexplainable paradox of human beings. We can be such fools and we can receive such tragedy and trauma and just hellish experience from life. And yet simultaneously, throughout it all, is this radiant divinity that sometimes is discovered. Sometimes is discovered, in the camps of Auschwitz. Sometimes it's discovered when we're giving birth. Sometimes it's discovered when we're opening the door and embracing our trauma. Sometimes it's discovered when we face an addiction. Sometimes it's discovered when we're on a meditation retreat. It's just such a paradox. Such a paradox. This life. And it makes no sense. No sense at all. How there can be both and. Just absolute hell and absolute heaven. Of course, the light is greater, the peace is greater, the space is greater than the hell. But the fact that hell can arise, it's so radically humbling to the ego. So radically humbling. One of the things our culture tried to do in the last couple hundred years is we tried, through scientific materialism, just to control. And in a sense, out of that, arose, the movement of atheism. Because atheism, just through logic and reason, said if there's an all-loving God, there can't be hell. There can't be rape. There can't be war. There can't be violence. There's all present, omnipotent God. There can't be bad things that happen. So therefore, there is no God. And the mistake that atheists make, or the mistake that, in a sense, I'll use this word, non-believers make, is they think reason makes things happen. A plus B equals C. 1 plus 1 equals 2. When in reality, 1 plus 1 equals 1. 1 plus 1 equals 1. Logic may say one thing, but the humble truth, when you open to it, shows you quite a different thing. Quite a different thing. And this is the lived paradox. This is the lived paradox of this world does not make sense, and yet God is in charge. God allows it to not make sense. God allows for death and war and destruction and beauty. And for our human mind, we don't know what to do with that. But if you step out of the human mind, if you step out of the rational mind, there's a great shift that can happen where you fall into the source of life itself. And see, you are the one that both gives life and takes life. That you are the one, that we are the one that gives life and takes life. This is one of the great things that Christ realized was that he was absolutely divine, absolutely holy, even while people were driving nails through his limbs. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And so I invite you, if there's anything within you that does not make sense, can you give yourself permission to lift it up before God, to give it to God, and say, this is yours. I do not understand it. I'm not going to fight with it. I'm not going to fight to try to put this in a box where it does make sense. I'll do my best to respond to it with love. But I'm going to give myself permission to let go and to trust and to open and to acknowledge the wildness of this world and the beauty of this world. The wildness and the beauty. The chaos and the clarity. And trust, and trust that ultimately there is a plan, even if it seems like there's not. Even if it seems like there's not. So anyways, I hope that teaching wasn't too obscure for everyone. Sometimes we think through spirituality we're going to come to a place of a great known, like where we will know everything. But sometimes rather we step into a realm of the unknown, where we just have to sit and look at the night sky and in a sense drool, just fall into the space of awe at the hugeness and the wildness and the uncontrollable nature of this world. One last thing that I'll say is, part of the way that Christ really acknowledged this was when he would look out at a crowd and say, you are forgiven. Like, you're forgiven. Like all these tendencies within you, egoic tendencies, desirous tendencies, lustful tendencies, greedy tendencies, they're not even ours. They're not ours. They're not yours. They were given to you by the flesh. They were given to you by life. They were literally given to you by God. So the funny thing is that sometimes people hate themselves for the demons they have within them. We judge ourselves for our own demons. And one of the non-dual places that Christ was able to step into was this realization that those demons aren't yours. They belong to the body, they belong to the flesh, they belong to evolution, they belong to animal nature. They don't necessarily belong to you. And in a tragic way, sometimes people get so afraid and terrified, or they go to such war with their own demons that they might kill their own self or kill the body. And it's interesting because God is really to blame. God created anger and violence and lust and desire. You didn't create that. God created that. God created depression and alcoholism and addiction. And so you are forgiven. It's another way of saying don't take the thoughts and the movements, the clinginess and the attachment, the grasping. Don't take it so seriously because it's not yours. It's not yours. Now, this is a dangerous teaching because it can be twisted into the fact of, or to the perspective of I don't have any responsibility. But that's not true either. Again, this paradox of the Christ giving birth into human form. It's a messy ordeal, a messy ordeal. And many of us like an idea of a path being really zipped up tight. We have our rules, we have our morality. We know exactly which way to go, what thing to do, which way is up and which way is down. But do we really know? Do we really know? And what shall we do when God puts us in a place like a double bind where we lose either way? God's putting me in a lot of those double binds where Craig's going to lose this way or he's going to lose that way. That's a great trap for the ego to fall into because it's ultimately humbled. And that's one of the great things that Christ showed us was here's a living saint who's going to be humbled. And then who rises, who rises, out of the paradox of human life into the heaven realm. That's what we celebrate on Easter. And the great teachings of this humble one who lived and who was persecuted and who was beaten, and yet who lived on. Who lived on. So anyways, I hope there was something there for some of you. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions. And yeah, it looks like the usual suspects have their hands raised, but if there's anyone new who has a question, please, please bring it forward. And I just ask that your question it's clear and it's direct. You don't ramble like I do sometimes. so anyways, okay, here's a question. And then just a reminder for folks, during these broadcasts, I record the questions, but your face won't be on YouTube, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going to say hi to Louie here. Let's see if I can unmute Louie. Are you with us, Louie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yeah, nice to see you, Louie.
Nice to see you too. I posted my question online. I wrote it down online, but I'll say it again over the microphone. My question was just simply, um, have you noticed that it's preferable to be in a certain position when meditating, whether it's in a chair or sitting on the floor or sitting in a Zen sort of a kneeling position, or does it really matter? That's my
Yeah,
question.
yeah. Okay, beautiful. That's a good question. A question about practice. The thing I've noticed the most is if your spine is straight, that's good enough. That's good enough. If your spine is straight and you're seated, uh, that's a great way to meditate. If your spine is straight and you're seated in a chair or seated on the floor, either are great. When I was young, I tried to twist my body into full lotus all the time. And because of that, I really like messed up my hips and my knees and my like a bunch of muscles in my back. My chiropractor, the massage therapist, was like, God, you really did something really bad to yourself, Mr. Holiday, through twisting your body like that. And so, I'm going to encourage you. The big thing is you want to be comfortable. When I was in India, I'd just sit on the concrete floor and I'd just be in such pain, in my hips and my legs, and it's quite distracting. It's quite, kind of a ridiculous thing to do to yourself. Now, in the East, where much of the culture, they don't live with chairs. They didn't grow up with chairs. So their hips and their knees and everything is much more flexible. So they can sit on the floor no problem. Um, but I encourage you to be comfortable. I've really experimented around with laying down versus being seated, and for a number of years I had to lay down um, for a lot of time just because the power of the kundalini was raging through my body. I just needed to lay down on the floor and be supported and let the ground hold me as I bounced around and had kriyas really flowing intensely. But I noticed that there was just like a subtle shift that would happen if I would just get up and sit. That the energy would kind of straighten itself out and would flow more fluidly and flow more powerfully. And it was almost like when you sit up, you can feel almost like you've been plugged into an electrical socket. Like there's more energy that will flow through you normally, 90, 95% of the time if you sit up versus laying down. Now, again, some people in the Sangha who live with chronic pain and who are really going through the ringer with their awakening need to lay down, and that's okay. I just encourage it to happen, just to be real intuitive about it. Don't get too lazy on the path. Uh, One of the best things I've heard in response to this question was from my teacher, Adya. I heard him, he came out of the Zen tradition, very formal, very strict. And he said, he said something like, I've seen people wake up, you know, totally laid back, sitting in a lawn chair. So if people can have a non-dual awakening, chilled out in a lawn chair or laying down flat or, seated any kind of way, um, it's not dependent upon your spine being straight, but it can be helpful. It can be helpful. And if you just notice, just energetically, like if the back is like its proper natural, posture and curve, just just the energy, it's almost like things just kind of click into place. And in addition to that, it's not just the back straight. Like there's a whole thing, with the neck, the tongue should be touching the roof of the mouth. And as you begin to experiment and just feel into these things, like all these old yoga teachings, there's a great truth to them. Because like if I tilt my spine the right way, it's just like boom, it clicks into place. The tongue rests at the roof of the mouth, just like boom, the energies click into place. And so it could be helpful to have formal posture. But what I found is most people, or many teachers, place too much emphasis on that. A lot of people who are overly strict in their postures, they also have a corresponding inner critic and or drill sergeant, or just yelling at them, correcting them, judging them. And that's not helpful in regards to meditation. Whereas people who just lay down and who've mastered relaxation, sometimes they can, just let go into a state of samadhi more quickly than someone who has a perfect meditation posture. So anyways, thanks, Louis. That was a fun question. Okay, let's hear what Kirsten has to say. Okay, so what's your question, Kirsten?
So my question was about the issue of control. You mentioned several times in the talk, and it's funny because I had today been observing the tendency that I have with control.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone who the people around me would say that I'm as a controlling person. But I noticed to what an incredible degree today. I was just noticing I have this like band of control that is kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Um, that is underlying, and I can't really sense how to loosen it because it's so established throughout. It has nothing to do with even specifics. It's
Yeah.
more like a sense of control.
Yeah.
And I surrender that energy, but it still is really thick. So I wanted to know what you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful question. Um, there's a number of places where, say, this sense of controlling can hold on. Like some people, like if you hang out with them, they might try to control you with their thoughts. Like I'm just going to have some fun here with the topic of the vaccine, and so some people might say, hey, you should really get the vaccine. You should get it tomorrow. You know, there's the possibility that you could get it tomorrow. You should get it. You need to get it right now. It would be good for you to get it. You should get it because, and as I speak in this way, there's a sense of like me trying to control someone. And we've all noticed it. So that's like the way the mind can project control on another. And so that's control at the level of mentality. And so one way of letting go of that would just be saying, okay, I'm just going to let go of that thought. I'm going to just stop trying to control my friends and neighbors and just let people choose for themselves. But then if you look, say, in the emotional nature, like sometimes people have this idea of control or this sense of control where you're driving in a car with someone and they're going really fast and you might just start gripping, in your throat or in your belly or in your, in your shoulders. And it's like you're trying to control the speed of the car, through just like gripping internally. And this is a mix of, say, emotional control mixed with, say, physical control. And like with the first type of control that I described, is you can work with inquiry or you can work with letting go of your thoughts and say, okay, I can just let go and not worry. But this deeper kind of way control manifests emotionally and physically, these things take a deeper type of surrender. And oftentimes what they take, to let go is the same thing a baby needs in order to let go. And the reason I bring up a baby is because, babies don't have such strong minds, but they have strong physicalities and they have strong emotional natures. And so if you look at, well, what does a baby need in order, say, to calm down from crying? They need to be picked up, they need to be held, they need to be soothed. They need to be soothed. And so there's this great equation of like the more you soothe yourself and the more you help your body to feel safe, the less your body will grip and try to control. And so in an outward sense, you may be like, super cool and chill with your thoughts and your projections on other people. And people may look at you and say, oh, no, she's not controlling at all. But in your body, there may be like this, this tension of trying to control. And, of course, there's a corresponding or a correlation, say, with trauma. Like if we've been traumatized, our body sometimes just gets stuck in a sense of fear or just a feeling of I'm not safe. And, this is where something like body work is ridiculously helpful. Ridiculously helpful. I can remember, for me, I did years of body work, and I was actually gifted in the sense that I built, like literally built and created a holistic art center. And that was like the first place I had my practice. And, my counseling practice. And so I needed an office, and a friend of mine said, hey, Craig, I'm a massage therapist. I want to create this whole cool, like hippie healing art centers with massage and you, Craig, and then acupuncturist and chiropractor and, hydrotherapy and all the sauna. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'm into that, And so basically we built it. And so for a number of years, I received a lot of massage, a lot of chiropractics, a lot of acupuncture, a lot of energy healing. And, there were times when, I like that word you said there, like you said, there's this band of control. And so I feel a band of control here, like around the forehead area, like where the thinking, trying to control. And I'll be transparent here, like trying to control my kids or trying to control my ex-wife when we were going through a divorce. So she just didn't completely destroy me. um, I tried to control, business and, things with business and this, this whole healing arts center we had, employees. So there's a kind of control there. There's a control, like this band of control around the heart, a band of control around the solar plexus, band of control in the belly, band in control in the pelvis and the pelvic floor. And so there's these things, these places can be really tight. And the beautiful thing about just showing up and surrendering on someone's massage table is, they just feel into the muscles of the jaw or whatever, and they say, "Hey, Craig, you're really tight there. How about I dig into that, for the next 20 minutes or hour?" And basically they bring me to tears. And like right about at the point where the tears start to, fall down the cheeks, I could feel that band that you're describing. It would just like pop and explode. And I'd say, "Oh, now there's freedom here," say in the jaw. And they work on the heart, or the ribs. A fun one is when they take their fingers and massage like up under your ribs. And you realize, oh my God, this is where I've stored anger and rage and fury or resentment. And a good body worker will help you to release these things. And that sometimes we can be very adept at meditation, but there's these levels of the body that just remain untouched. And we need to get some body work done. Sometimes we can do we are really good at meditation and these releases don't happen. But when we start to do yoga, physical yoga, asana yoga, these things start to just unravel out of us. They can be quite wild and disconcerting at times because you may feel just a great release come after doing a powerful 90-minute practice of yoga. But then there's times when, okay, we get good at that, but we've, for some reason or another, we still are guarded in these different areas of the body. And then it can be helpful to have, again, a body worker, a rolfer. And sometimes it's important to go really deep, like with rolfing, which is like the most difficult type of massage. And other times you might find, like I had people hold me, they just hold the back of my skull with this energy work called cranial sacral work. And it's so subtle, it's so gentle. Most people have a difficult time coming back to cranial sacral. Like after you schedule one session, you're like, I don't really know if anything happened. I'm not going to go back the second time. But if you stick with it, you might realize, oh, there's these whole subtle ways where the muscles of my skull or head, hold tension. And when you work with a very subtle body work like cranial sacral, you might find these huge waves of relief happen through the avenue of just the gentlest touch ever. And so, it's quite interesting. And it's quite humbling too, because most people, they meditate like from here, like there's a command center. Here, I'm in charge and I'm going to let go and I'm going to let go in my heart and I'm going to let go in my belly. But sometimes often that doesn't work. You have to get completely out of your head. And you have to allow the body to be soothed into letting go. Soothed. And so when the body feels soothed and it feels safe, all of a sudden you might just notice like these rubber bands of tension just like ripping and opening. And then there's such freedom that comes. Such freedom. Just overwhelming freedom. And Kirsten, it's interesting because I remember you asked a question about, something like, hey, Craig, I've done a lot of therapy or whatever, and I feel like I should be done with these things. And in a sense, I'm going to tell you there's a lot more layers to trauma and pain and where we hold control or whatever, our quote unquote issues are. There's layers upon layers upon layers, all the way down into cellular memory. But the good news is when you commit yourself to doing this, like you're simply opening more worlds of freedom within you. You know, oftentimes people get a little bit frustrated, like, gosh, I thought I'd let that go. It's like, oh no, how about there's a new place to let go? And if there's a new place to let go, that means there's a new place where I can discover peace. And there can be a greater expansion in the body, a greater freedom in the body, a greater emptiness in the body. And it's a beautiful thing, anytime we find these layers and we begin to meet them with love and they release, it's to be celebrated because there can be that much more space within us that can be experienced directly and fully. And I just want to acknowledge this because it's not always easy work. Like there'd be times that I would go and get a massage, and like I'd get one say at noon, and the girl would go so deep that afterwards I'd be like, oh my God, I just feel like I'm detoxing, just hell for like the next 6 or 8 hours. But the next day I'd wake up and it would just be like, oh, there's a new realm of heaven here. And there's not that grinding teeth and that tension in those bands. And so anyways, I know so many of us get frustrated about the length of the path. But when we're taking ourselves to body work or going to counseling or therapy or whatever it is, it's such an act of love from you to you that I deeply encourage you to see that it's a gift. It's a gift you're giving someone. It's a gift you're giving someone, and that someone, in this case, happens to be you. So, anyways, it's a tremendous act of love, is what I'm trying to communicate. So, okay, so I think I said I was gonna go to Justina. Justina, let me see if I can find you here. Justina, I'm going to unmute you. Are you here, Justina?
Yeah, I'm here. I have a hard time finding the raise hand feature, so I usually
right. I can't find it either.
Cool.
Yeah, so don't worry about it. What's on your mind, Justina? It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. So I had a question about like these sensations I'm having in the back of my heart area.
Yeah.
And I was just curious what it was about. It's like just like kind of like an energetic kind of like pleasurable kind of sensation that it has been occurring recently in the back of my heart, and just curious if you had any insight about that and like what the back of the heart is about.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, how about you tell me when you feel into it?
Yeah.
What do you experience there?
Well, it's love.
Love.
Yeah.
How much love?
Like a lot. It kind of goes up to my head too. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, let me see if I can work on my buttons here, right? Yeah, for many of us, the way we connect with the heart is through the front. We connect to the heart through our emotional nature. And that's, that's normal, that's human. But if you go inward toward the spine to the heart, you'll find that the heart starts getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And you'll find that the heart, it has this back door that can open up to the absolute nature of God. And it can be experienced as absolute love. Like a love without personality, a love without form, a love without walls. The more you are on the surface of your heart, like your emotional heart, then it's a very conditional love. It's like love, I'm in love with this one person because they were really nice to me or they're really attractive or whatever it is. That's human type of love. But as you journey back, and this is true for most of the chakras, is the further you go back toward the spine, you may find that they have this back door that opens up and can be experienced as like a doorway to the absolute. Like there's no person there, no me, no you, only oneness, only unity, only love. And you'll find more and more through the process of awakening, or just simply as you pay attention to these places, that there's so much to you, so much to this life, so much to your nature, to your essence. At first you may think, oh, I know what love is. It feels like this. But when you start to go back to the back of the spine, it becomes so impersonal and holy, so deeply connected. It will oftentimes just take your breath away, and there won't be much words to describe it. And so I encourage you, Justina, or whoever might be experiencing something like this, is to surrender and melt. And if you give yourself permission to be silent, you'll see that this is just the beginning. All kinds of things will be shown to you. But if we're busy all the time chasing this or that, these things won't necessarily be shown to you. Because you'll have your attention elsewhere. Yes, one of the things that God reminds me is that no one really pays attention to themselves. No one pays attention to their inner temple. They're too busy paying attention to, Netflix or whatever's online. And again, it's an act of love for you to notice, sometimes like when the back of my heart started to open, it actually just felt like a lot of pain in my back. And I was like, oh my God, this is so painful. The ego aspect of me just wanted to ignore it. My teacher said, no, don't ignore that. Just keep opening there, sitting there. See what it is, Craig. See what it is. I've said this a lot, but he said to me, you don't know what pain is, Craig. And it so confused me. I said, I know what pain is. It hurts. He said, no, you don't know what pain is. And I realized pain was a great doorway to the absolute. To the absolute. So anyways, thanks, Justina. Yeah. Justina's on fire with divinity. on fire with divinity. That's a good thing. Okay, let's go to David here. David, you with us?
Yeah, what's up, Craig and Sangha?
Howdy.
Hey, so I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about going with your gut. Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at going with my heart a lot of the time, and I've just began going with my gut,
Yeah,
and it makes a big difference. So if you could just go into going with your gut a little bit,
yeah,
be cool.
yeah. That's a good question. So, in one sense, going with your gut and going with your heart is one and the same. Is one and the same. Those two voices, if they're voices of truth, should completely line up. Now, I will say this: our heart, because it's a center of love, it may give the directives or the order or the action or the vision in a more sweet way, or with sweeter language, um, like your heart may, like, say you're in a real difficult situation with somebody, like another human being. uh, if you ask your heart, well, what should I do? Your heart may say, something like, meet them with love, but then move on. And if you ask your gut, it just might say, move on, move on. And so again, it's like the same ultimate action. But the gut oftentimes comes with more power, because that's what its nature is, its power and strength. Whereas the heart may come with more love. And ultimately, when, say, all 7 centers are open, in theory, even though they are 7 divine minds, they should all, give the same instruction, generally speaking. But you might feel intuitively called just to get to know the gut. Say, well, what is this? Like, what's happening here? What's this like? And I think it's important. It's a form of mastery to be able to know the difference between the heart and the belly, the solar plexus and the throat chakra and the third eye. And like the third eye, when you look at something, a difficult situation, the third eye may say, this is not real. Pay it no attention. Pay it no attention. And so each of the centers have the same intelligence, but just with a little bit different of a flavor. A little bit different of a flavor. And in the beginning, as you get to know them, it's going to be like you connecting with them. But as we awaken more fully, you realize, I am my heart. I am the God. Like, I am the Hara. I am Buddha nature. In a sense, it's really what Hara is. And you'll find that there's no you choosing it. You just find that the energy is living through you as you. And so in the beginning, it's like, it's like the meditator is trying to work with the human mind and trying to connect with divine mind and transcend and this and that. But eventually all the doing falls away. And there's simply a happening that arises through you. Like, I rarely say I'm going to go into my gut now. It's like I just speak. And what speaking is the Hara. It's not like a Craig who's picking and choosing. It's rather this intelligence just flows through. And sometimes there's a Craig. Sometimes there's no. And so whenever, if I say this in a reverse order, if there's a Craig who's picking and choosing, I've actually realized I'm not surrendered. But when you're surrendered, like, your heart will speak when it's time for the heart to speak. Your gut will move when it's time for the gut. to act. And then ultimately, there's no thinking or analyzing or figuring. It just moves through you. But before we get there, oftentimes we have to at least get to know these places and open to them and surrender to them and trust them. And it's a funny thing just to notice, like, if you walk into a situation, notice what the human mind says. Oh, don't trust them. But then you come into your heart, you come into your belly, and your belly might say, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. This is good. This is good. Whereas the mind may be judging from a place of bias or conditioning, or maybe it's your father or mother's thought arising within your consciousness. So anyways, beautiful question. I thank you, David. Yeah, good to see you. Okay, so now I don't see Richard here, but Richard, if you're here, oh, you are here. Okay, let me see if I can unmute you.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone. So good to be here with you. Hi. Hello, Facebook, Sangha as well. Craig, I want to do something a little different with my time today, and it's going to be two things. I promise it'll only take about 7 minutes, which is shorter than you answering a question, probably. So,
I love it. It's 7 minutes, huh?
Yeah, put me on a timer. Here we go. The first thing that I want to do is this: I've had a really difficult day. I've had a really difficult day.
Yeah.
And I'm going through a lot. And so I was thinking like, I need some support. I need some support. But then I thought, I'm going to make this a group thing. So I want you to imagine here in my hands is all of the hardship that everyone in the Sangha is experiencing.
Yeah.
And just put it there, right here.
Yeah.
Excellent. And now that you've done this, we're going to do a quick practice called heart breathing from a therapeutic model that I use, where when you breathe in, you imagine that energy is coming in from the earth and from the sky. And when you breathe out, you're imagining that loving energy is moving from the front and back of your heart. And I want you to imagine that it's moving right here to all of the hardship that everyone is holding right now, because we're human and that's real.
Yeah.
And I want you to imagine that as you breathe in and the love is coming right here, it's also coming to you, right?
Yeah.
That you can feel it going out and coming in. You can feel it going out and coming in. And we'll do this about 5 times, okay? And we'll start now. So breathing in, sky and earth, breathing out through the back and the front, right here to yourself. Couple more times. Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for doing that with me. I felt that and it was lovely. And I hope that you did too. And so the second thing that I want to do, Craig, is almost like give you like an affirmation. But I want you to let me do it. You deflect a lot. I just want to name that. And I really want you to receive this. I'm not a needy student in need of the, something of my teacher. This isn't going from any place other than.
I felt a lot of love with the little breathing practice.
That's so good to hear.
That you offered, and
Thank you.
like with a sweet light. And so I felt the healing quality of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was listening to something this week where a woman who's a trauma therapist, probably in her 60s, just a master of her craft, talking about what it means to hold space for other people, and how there are very few spaces in the world, really, right, where people really do feel seen, held, loved, just for who they are, right, and in all their wounded places too. Um, and there was another thing that she said that really reminded me of you, Craig. She said, you know, there are so many people in the world who want to pour out, who want to give, but they need to receive first. I'm not talking about you. You've received plenty. I'm talking about your ability to give to others so that they can receive and move back into the world, right? And I feel that you are truly a space for that, both in your private practice and here in the Sangha.
Yeah.
And I really just wanted to name that, right? That you've come to a place in your life where again, you're a human being. I totally get that. You make mistakes, so on and so forth. We can assume that that's there. And also, you hold this very special gift, as many other people in the Sangha do as well, to create real space for people to be seen just as they are and loved just as they are, so that true healing can emerge and that they can move into the world a little more whole and able to give of their own gifts. And I really wanted to say that. I really wanted to give that to you because I think it's kind of assumed and it deserves to just be spoken like over you in a way that gets noticed and really appreciated as the very, very precious gift that it is. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
Mhm.
That was
Mm.
yeah, that was really sweet.
Mhm.
Yeah, to hear that. And yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Thank you, Richard. I wasn't expecting that. Thanks for all the love and even that little healing you did. And I could feel it in myself, and I can feel it in the song as well. Yeah, yeah. It's actually one of the things my teacher used to do was like we just like imagine that suffering, just like lift it up and give it to God. Give it to God because it gets to be too much. And Richard brings an interesting point of a lot of times healers don't allow themselves to be held or don't allow themselves to be loved, or they deflect. And yeah, it's a real common thing. And so it's important to if you're going to be in a role of helping or serving, and even if you're just a parent or a good friend to someone, to make sure that you're being taken care of as well. Being taken care of as well. So, yeah, thank you. I bring some tears to my eyes. So, yeah, okay. Good. Let me see if I did my part here. I think I have a couple questions on Facebook, so we get to those. Hi, Craig. I'm experiencing a kind of weird neutrality, sensing that awakening is not lost and found, but it's everything all the time. It feels like almost an autopilot taking over. Definitely less drama. Feelings are felt and they pass. I'm just kind of wondering about this neutral feeling. Yeah, the neutral feeling is equanimity. It's a word I don't use too often. But yeah, equanimity there's a sweetness about it. a gentleness about it, a loving inclusivity about it. And what you find is that equanimity will take over your being. It'll be the very nature and the space of your mind. You know, oftentimes I speak about silence, but silence sometimes can come off as a little void-like. Equanimity has a little bit more compassion in it. It's like a dash of compassion to it. And it's a compassion that can allow for everything. Like when I loaded up the van the other day and packed up all this climbing gear and everything. I took my daughter out to the desert, and then she got sick from the vaccine, and I had to turn around and bring her home. There's not a single thought of like, oh gosh, I really wanted to go climbing. It was just, of course, I'll take you home. Like, let's get you home, let's get you in bed. And that's what equanimity is like. It's just completely neutral. Sometimes it's so neutral, we can not know how to. We can forget what we like, what we need, what we want, and that's why it can be helpful to reconnect with the gut too, kind of give you some direction. And so when we get in equanimity, it can be helpful to, if you need to make a decision, to check in with your belly or your heart. So anyways, did I do it? I think so. Let me just check. Thank you again, Richard, and thank you again, everyone in the Sangha, for holding space for Craig. He's certainly not perfect, the character Craig, but I'll say this, with a great deal of humility, I certainly love him. But of course, I also forget sometimes, to take care of him, My wife sometimes says, hey, you didn't eat, you didn't drink. Let's get you some water, let's get you something to eat. You look really tired, Craig. You need to lay down or whatever. And it's nice sometimes to have, people to remind you to think of yourself, take care of yourself. So truly, thank you to all of you. Thanks for all the support, the emotional support, the kind words, and the feedback, and everything. Thanks for the corrections. Yeah, those are good too. Thanks for the donations. Those are really helpful with everything. Looking forward to seeing you all Wednesday night. Looking forward to seeing you all on retreat. Just a quick reminder, if any of you are in the Kundalini group, no Kundalini group this Friday because we'll be teaching a retreat. So show up early. Find your link if you don't have it. I'll send them all out again for those of you who pre-registered. So much love to each and every one of you. Bye, everyone. Good night.